Okay. Good morning, and very warmly welcome to this FIBS event on digitalization and how digital solutions can facilitate sustainable business. My name is Helena Kekki, and I'm working at FIBS as a leading specialist, and I'll be guiding you through this program of this morning, together with my colleague Ulla Roiha.
Good morning, everyone.
We are extremely happy to see so many of you. It's a full house again, and despite of some digital solution or challenges, I think we are now ready to start our interesting program of today. We have extremely interesting topics ahead of us. But now when we are discussing today about digitalization, and it's a topic that has been discussed a lot for many years already, but not so much has been discussed about how digital solutions can solve sustainability challenges, or are there some other challenges that digitalization is bringing to the tables of corporate responsibility. When we are talking about digitalization, it means that an increased use of digital solutions in our daily lives. How we act as consumers, but also how companies are running their businesses, their business processes, and how they are delivering their products and services. Quite often, these kind of terms are used. And today, we are going to talk a lot about, for example, artificial intelligence, algorithms, blockchain, and big data, for example. Digitalization it's really like a game changer. It has already changed how we behave, and it's at the moment the biggest driver behind the change of how our society is developing. It's going to, because of the automation, it's making our life much more efficient. We can be more informed because we have access to more data. It allows us to be more transparent as businesses and eventually much healthier and happier. But there is another side to the coins of using digital solutions. There's been a lot of discussion already now that how this digitalization is changing, is threatening our privacy, and how to make sure that the data is being securely stored. There's been also a lot of discussion on how digitalization is affecting our human rights. Also, there's a threat for systematic biases and so on. Because of the automation, what happens to our jobs, for example? So it's been said that for the last 2 decades, it was globalization that brought new topics and stakeholders to the tables of corporate responsibility managers at the companies. But now it's said that it's actually digitalization that is bringing these new topics and challenges which companies need to address.
Once again, good morning also from my behalf to everyone here in this room, and for all those who are actually following the show via online, our online meeting. Digitalization is going, I'm sorry, I have to actually apologize to you that I came back very late night last night from a sustainable development, from a sustainable brands conference in Copenhagen, and then my close to 2-year-old daughter woke up in the middle of the night. She somehow sensed that I'm back home, and she kept me awake for many hours. So my apologies if I kind of say something very odd in between. But yeah, so this morning is part of our Sustainable Development Goals in Global Value Chains program, which is supported by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Why is this? Okay, these goals, as you probably all know, they are our common agenda for the next 17 years. They show us the pathway for sustainable development. None of these 17 goals will be met without business and business solutions. However, these goals, they cannot be reached with business as usual. We need innovations, we need new products, new services, completely new business models. And that's where the main connection with digitalization is. I think it's actually been claimed that none of these goals will be met without digital solution. So digitalization really plays a key role in reaching these most important targets for all of us, each company, for all of you in this room. There are already some great examples. We know there have been like banking for the poor, or all the mobile financial services that are connecting the poorest people in the world to the global financial system, allowing them to receive and send money. There are several health initiatives. Digitalization, digital solution can bring doctors to remote locations. Even surgeries can be conducted remotely. Earth observation data can be used to halt deforestation. A lot of intelligent energy solutions that help us to combat climate change. Blockchain technology can increase the transparency in value chain, helping us to improve, for instance, good jobs. Examples are countless, and as we probably will hear later today, digitalization can even support us to promote global peace. Finnish companies are very well placed to show the way on digital solutions. According to FIBS study on SDGs, 30% of companies in Finland, they are providing technological or data solutions required to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, versus 16% of the companies globally. According to CGI study, 90% of decision makers in Finland see that digitalization and sustainability have a strong link. And already 70% are telling that in their organizations, digitalization and sustainability are already strongly connected.
So then, what are a few examples? Now at the beginning of the event, we are going to show a few examples on how companies can use digital solutions to make sure that their operations are sustainable and responsible. One example is as simple as hiding some of the data that you are using in your recruitments in order to make sure that your unbiased, unconscious biasing is not affecting your recruitment processes as Suominen is doing through the blind hiring system. So basically how it works is that when they are looking for new employees, they are hiding irrelevant information from the hiring managers, such as all the personal data, name, gender, age, and so on. All those factors that are not relevant in performing well in the job. So this, according to them and according to many studies, is increasing the equal opportunities to get hired, and also promotes diversity at the workplace, among other, like few examples. So it's like something like really simple that you can use in the organization without implementing very complicated complicated systems. Another example relates to gaining a little bit of visibility on how sustainable your products are. We all know that when we go to supermarkets, we have very little time to decide on which products we are choosing, and it's very difficult to know how those products were manufactured, how sustainable they are. So How Good decided to work on this challenge. They are collecting information from 350 different kind of sources, combining that vast amount of information, putting it all together to one application. So basically how the application works is that when a consumer wants to find out whether the milk that they want to buy is sustainable, they can just go into an app, type the product that they want to buy. They get a list of products, and the system is telling you how the labor conditions in those companies were, and what kind of environmental impacts those products have. So it helps the consumers to choose wisely. When this is combined at the shop, that the shop actually puts a rating system next to the price, indicating whether the product is good, great, or best of the industry. It really helps to the consumers to choose wisely and to make more informed decisions. They already have 250,000 products rated according to using this system. A bit more complicated system is the use of blockchain to trace in real time how products have been produced, all the way from the producer to the retailer shop. So a consumer can go to a shop and access a unique URL, which indicates exactly how that batch of product has been produced and who has been working on it. Then there are a lot of examples on how you can use automated lighting and automated, for example, temperature controls to reduce carbon emissions in your business facilities, or how you can use advanced communication technologies to reduce the amount of travel that your employees need. So there are so many tools already available and so many ways to use them. It's really not a question anymore that what machines can do, because they can do so many things, and in many aspects the machines are already outperforming what humans are doing. But we are moving to ask what a machine should be doing, because they can do so many things at the moment. So now it's already a time to really think that should the machines be doing everything that they are doing? Are there some things that the machines shouldn't be doing? And what is the role of sustainable and responsible companies? How, if they want to act in an ethical way, do they have to take some kind of actions and activities to make sure that the use of digital solutions is sustainable? So these are the topics that we are discussing today, and the questions to which we are seeking answers.
Few small practicalities before we move ahead. So, first of all, please do tweet #betterbusiness. This event is in English, as our members constantly are asking us to have more program in English, as you know, since you also have probably many non-Finnish speaking colleagues. The show will be recorded, so if you want to rewatch this, you are very welcome, and you can also you'll get a link so you can also share it with your colleagues. We are going to have a break at 10:30. Use that for networking. There is sufficient time for discussion. And the presentations, which you'll see, they'll be shared with you. You'll get an email after the event with the link to those presentations. But then let's move on to our actual program. Our next speaker is Mr. Professor Timo Honkala. He will tell us whether artificial solutions can be a tool to sustainable business. Unfortunately, Timo fell ill and couldn't make it here today, but he was really kind and we are really grateful that he still promised to address you via Skype. Timo he's a professor. He has been working with artificial intelligence for the past 30 years. Timo has described his motivation on artificial intelligence development as follows. It is better for machines to be like humans rather than humans needing to act like machines. Honkala has authored approximately 200 publications related to different areas of artificial intelligence methods and applications, often related to humanities and social sciences. And recently, he has become very well known for developing the FIBS machine. And it was around a week ago that his new book on FIBS machine was published. Timo, you're welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for this. Might be a little bit difficult, but it's actually a good test of digital technology. So I would like to thank for this opportunity, and as a first test, I would like to ask, could you please confirm if the connection works well enough? The speaking head is not that important, but if you can hear my words clearly enough. So some confirmation for this would be appreciated.
Yes, everyone is nodding in the room, so all is fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So today's topic, from my point of view, is first of all, I find it very important and very timely. And then what I would like to point out today is the influence of this so-called artificial intelligence on the matters. I will discuss some of those issues, and here, if you have any chance to see this old picture, which is more than 100 years old, but with the basic ideas that the traveling or industry, etc., had a huge change through the use of technology. So the human work, physical work, encountered dramatic change, and now the same kind of analogical change is taking place in relation to work and our activities, even in the areas related to intelligent action and so on. And I will discuss here some of these issues, and I would also appreciate a chance to hear your comments and questions in the end. But from the point of view of sustainability in general and sustainability of business and organization activities is being challenged in the sense that the operational contexts are being even dramatically changed. There is naturally some hype that can be detected, but on the other hand, even from the point of view of information technology experts, the changes of the future may be surprising. And if I summarize already from the beginning, what is the important thing here is that machine learning has some fundamental effects. So the I2, based on large data collections, so-called big data, is something that gives the machines, the systems, a possibility to actually conduct reasoning and problem solving in a novel way. Here we can start from thinking about human beings. So when we refer to the past, when our muscles were challenged by machines, now our brains, so to say, are being challenged. And this is not only regarding so-called explicit mind, meaning that the rational or language-based thinking is not the only domain where artificial intelligence is approaching us, but it is also this so-called intuition. So our ability to conduct wise decisions or informed decisions based on not only on our education and what we have read, but also on our personal experience. And the capacity and importance of intuitive decision making is actually very central to human action. That is the reason why the leaders of companies or organizations are not relying on theoretical results, applied such results, and the reason is that the intuition based on human experience has, as it has been proven, higher capacity to conduct good quality decisions and is indeed more powerful in that than this rational, so-called rational, explicit or somehow logical reasoning. The basic reason for this is that human rational mind is limited in its capacity. So, for example, the number of variables that can be taken into account at the same time is limited to something like 4 or 5. If we think about complex situations, whether it's business or some other organizational activity or even just in personal life, if there are dozens or hundreds or even thousands of variables, issues that would need to be taken into account, our rational mind doesn't have the capacity to do that. And it has been proven and widely publicized result that in that case our intuitive mind is actually really better and more powerful than this so-called rational mind. From this we can start to discuss about the developments related to artificial intelligence. In the 1980s, millions and maybe even billions of dollars and different currencies were invested into the development of so-called or such systems that were, or expert systems that were supposed to be there to, for example, serve as medical experts. And the basic approach was based on the idea that the best experts would be interviewed and they would reveal their secrets, so to say, and tell about the rules that they use when they conduct their work, like analyzing the patient's state and prescribing medication. And for that purpose, interviews were conducted, and these knowledge engineers tried to formulate these principles into rules, and these rules were in linguistic form as this kind of explicit formatted sets of rules, but this effort failed in most of the cases. So if you think about a doctor or a person responsible in an organization, there the implicit understanding of the world is that important that things can't be just formalized or written as in linguistic form. And that's why the earlier version of artificial intelligence didn't work that well. And what have we reached now? We are in a situation in which we can simulate two important human skills. One of those is machine learning, and the other one is pattern recognition. If we think digitalization in its current form, or how it's mostly seen, there is no so-called pattern recognition to take place. Pattern recognition is such a human skill in which you can look at wise experience of the surrounding world and transform that experience into words and sentences, etc. We can compress our experience into such units that we can tell about that experience to others. But as indicated, this explicit rule-based linguistic form is not enough to make efficient systems. Whether we call it digitalization or artificial intelligence, we are transforming the development into a form in which we can simulate this pattern recognition. For example, in the area of artificial intelligence, there is a lot of discussion about robotic cars. So if you think about the situation of driving a car, you can't really write down the rules how to drive a car, like we have for a long time used the example of bicycling. If you have a bicycle and you would be there and to instruct the poor child to do this task, So then it's not really sorry for the break. Technological failure of some network technologies, always to be remembered that technology may fail. But here, so discussing about this example of human ability to conduct, have ability to pattern recognition, is that it concerns our ability to, for example, drive a car, and this same ability is being programmed to machines, and it implies and includes an ability to process information in non-rule or non-linguistic way. So, for example, here we are discussing through the use of English language, but if we think about expressing things, so I don't have very rich environment, but here in my background, but if I take something from the home environment and way, for example, this here, so one good visual experience into the word pillow, but if we think about the huge number of details in these experiences and how they are transformed into these linguistic forms, that process is by far not difficult, by far not simple. And I would even claim that recognizing this to be a pillow and recognizing thousands and thousands of other items in the world through our eyes and categorizing the way how we do through the language of English, Finnish or any other, that process is much more difficult than, for example, playing chess or anything like that. So this kind of open environment with those, let's say, billions of pixels around us through this kind of things or these kind of systems simulating, for example, human vision, gives an idea about how complex systems we are being our environment. And if we think about the concept of sustainability, one of the challenges but also opportunities which we are reaching now is that, and through the use of modern computational technology is being improved considerably. And if we think about especially so-called machine learning, so our ability to model and to imitate human ability to learn things, we can think about the basic situation. I will discuss shortly the different kinds of machine learning to give you some ideas on it. But in general, so the use of machine learning has become more important lately thanks to some developments. One of those is just simply the capacity of computers. So the memory space and the computational speed of systems is better, and that has an influence on even on artificial intelligence. If you think about the number of pixels, just the simple thing in digital photography, so this number of pixels naturally has an influence on how good quality pictures we are able to have in our computational tools. In olden times, or so let's say some 10, 15 years ago, photographers said that it can't ever be digital, but the question was about this capacity. A similar issue concerns simply even our intellect and our capacity to understand and to model the world. Another important thing here is that we have more and more data. These collections that describe the state of the world, the business environment, etc., are become more and more widely available, and either those open collections or those which are collected for this particular organization only, those give increasing chance to model phenomena in a functional way. And if we think about the sustainability issue, it's actually a means to gain certain degree of rationality. So in a way we can check the state of the world more and more accurately, and in some sense some multidimensional optimization of our actions can be based on better and better view on the reality. And in that sense, this kind of good combination of collaboration and of the state of the world. And then the question is that how does each individual and organization in a way optimize one's action based on this improved understanding. Of course, one shouldn't be too optimistic about such optimization, because there are various reasons why people or organizations even don't want to take, in some sense, an optimal action. And this means that the reasons for actions are multidimensional, and some issues may be such that they overplay the kind of importance or the reason why some others would be used. But my suggestion here is that in long run it's anyway useful and important that such a way to view and understand the state of the world in a clear manner will be helping people and organizations to make good decisions. And then it's of course question about what are the here we go. some thinking break again. So please confirm if there is, or if there's, please tell if there's some problem. So coming back to the issue that the skills related to machine learning and artificial intelligence and the kind of understanding of all the possibilities and the development of methods has also an important role here, but it's good to also remember that the development has been taking place for more than 50 years, and for example in Finland, Professor Teuvo Korhonen has been one of the forefathers of machine learning and neural networks for, let's see, at least for 40-50 years too, so that from the 70s especially and the early 80s, some of the central innovations have already taken place. There is all the time, of course, new developments, but the development of new methods is slower in some sense than, for example, the development of capacity of computational resources. So in order to develop a fundamentally new algorithm may take from a research group even decades in order to really achieve some new breakthrough. So the development in this area is not anymore based on finding the potentially new algorithm, but it's more like developing new cognitive systems, which means that the more holistic or larger collection of algorithms and other components are put together, and this what I mentioned about machine learning and having that data to get a clearer view on the phenomena is important here. And if we think about the future of these technologies and their use, for example, in order to gain improved sustainability, and how to, for example, in businesses to conduct or make wise decisions for the future. So I would say that this co-evolution is important here. So I would say that we humans are not being replaced by machines. The way how, for example, our muscular work was being diminished 100, 150, etc. years ago, but we still do all kinds of things, for example, related to that using the machines, and then we need people to drive the cars, etc. Now we are reaching a new situation where our intellectual work and also our intuitive work is being changing, and that doesn't mean that we humans would become kind of useless or having a situation where we wouldn't have any role, but actually we have more powered situation in the future because, for example, our problem-solving skills are largely empowered by these technologies. Moreover, our ability to communicate in a meaningful way with each other is being empowered. In the area of language technology, there was this same kind of situation for a long time, that those technologists in various companies and universities tried to develop language technologies like machine translation using these rule-based systems based on the understanding of human language and its details. But if we think about the recent developments related to the, I'm looking for where did I put it? So I suspect that not all of you have tested, for example, just simply the Google Translate system lately. So I take the chance to say just a word in English sentence and assuming that a large enough kind of a part of you would understand what happens when I translate this English sentence to Finnish. And let me see, we could take an open or kind of a real test here for the system, and let's see if we take we are discussing how artificial intelligence future. So the last word was detected in the wrong way, and I was a little bit slow. It's used to the idea that I am a little bit faster than this, but with this flu I'm a little bit slow. But maybe that tells something about the kind of capacity. So we are coming to a situation where we can use such systems to translate spoken language into another spoken language. And this capacity is based on so-called multi-layer neural networks. And about half a year, Finnish also got into this group of languages, which is now being handled by this neural network technology. So in essence, this system is based on this intuitive processing, so to say. So, and this development is now taking place in very many areas of society and technology, where the capacity of these systems is being considerably improved by this idea that we don't need to program the system to be intelligent, but we can program the systems to learn to be intelligent. And there is, I would claim, being influence, which is kind of taking place through this change of strategy in the development. So we can't really kind of understand or use the model of this kind of explicit knowledge, but we can create systems that imitate our ability to understand the world in an intuitive way. And this also influences, or this development influences our way to, or how we deal with the world also emotionally. So whether it's the question of taking into account the environment or other people in an empathetic way, so even understanding those phenomena, emotional phenomena, is being influenced by these artificial intelligence technologies. And in this Peace Machine book, I describe some of the contents of those developments and the future opportunities which can be gained through these kind of technologies. There are possibilities of using these technologies ill-willed way, but it's also a great opportunity for what I have been calling cultural evolution can and to behave in some sense in an increasingly improved way with these kind of wise machines that we can carry with us just in our pockets when we are doing things. And the same kind of idea, of course, can be applied when we are dealing and considering sustainability of organizations and the overall context. And that was also one motivation on writing this book on Peace Machine, because I would like to see that or claim that using something like, what is it in English, but something like the range of 1,000 billion euros or dollars per year on war technology and going through war is greatly diminishing the chance to have sustainability in the world. And in this book I describe ways and means how actually these developments could even realistically lead in long run, let's say minimally 100 years, into a greatly improved situation. So I don't claim any short-term wins, but the long-term developments can be really radically improving. I have now said most of the things that the fluish person can keep in mind, and I'm sorry for this kind of potential little bit not a fully optimal way of communicating with you, but I hope that you had a chance to hear this clearly and to get some ideas for the future actions. And I thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to use time that I couldn't follow exactly, but what the chairpersons or people could then guide how much time we have available and so on. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Timo. Yeah, so there is now some time, some room for questions from the audience. And I think it was a really like a great example that technology can help us to connect, but it's probably never exactly the same as a face-to-face encounter. But is there anyone who would like to ask something?
Okay, so my name is Nina Rudanko and I'm from Nasdaq, and thank you for this excellent presentation, super interesting. So Timo, so far, can you mention what would be, in your opinion, a good example where artificial intelligence has so far been used in a very good way that you support a lot?
Did you hear the question? Kuulitko?
I didn't have chance to hear yet, but thank you for connecting with the English. And as a chair, repeat the comment or questions.
Yes. So there was a question from Nasdaq. What would be the good examples where artificial intelligence has been applied in a wise way?
So the question is interesting, and I would say that, for example, this language technology and machine translation is a good example because it improves the chance for collaboration and communication over language borders. There are naturally a large number of somehow or some kind of optimization tasks in which various artificial intelligence technologies have been used, but then they may be quite specific and may kind of improve the situation of a particular organization, company, etc., but not necessarily in overall state of affairs. So that's the basic situation. My own motivation for writing this strongly related to that these methods and technologies can really be used to improve the overall situation.
There is one question on the back of the room. Just a moment, please. We'll bring the mic to you.
Should I introduce myself? Or? Okay. Hi, I'm Nora Lindström from Plan International. I had the pleasure of listening to Mikko Hyppönen from F-Secure yesterday at a forum about IoTs, and he was talking about how anything smart is vulnerable. And I would like to hear Professor Honkela's thoughts on the vulnerabilities of AI and how there are then opportunities to use it for bad as well by hacking and so on. Thank you.
Hey, did you?
I heard the question, and it's very important and interesting, and it's definitely clear that as humans make errors, machines make errors and are vulnerable for misuse, etc. I would say that the future of these systems is being, let's say, guided or it being influenced by the fact that they can be developed more and more into the, let's say, human cognitive architecture direction in which this kind of multi-level architecture is important. So, for example, errors of systems, so when they fail in various ways, unintended way, or when there is issues which are related to, for example, to lying or anything like that from another system or from humans, etc. The kind of the complexity of these systems in a positive way starts to work towards the direction in which the kind of error is actually kind of being there's a counter force through this kind of possibility that if something is going wrong at one level of the system, so there is a chance for another level to, in a way, to take over, etc. And these questions are extremely challenging and such that I have emphasized that the developments in these areas cannot be run by a small number of people kind of alone, but this also requires really a very old motivations and into directions into which the systems are going, and in order to reach some, let's say, sustainability in these developments, so the kind of the motivations should be available kind of for the larger community. This is, of course, quite challenging from the point of view that those companies which want to benefit from these developments, they are not necessarily very eager to reveal their secrets related to these developments, and that's why this is a very complicated question and requires, I think, very careful consideration about how things are being developed from the point of view of, for example, public and private activities.
Thank you. There is a time for one more question.
No? Working? Yes. Okay. All right. I'm Katriina Ristolainen from the educational field, namely Haga-Helia, the University of Applied Sciences, working there as an academic advisor. And my question to Professor Honkala is that now that we have digitalization and all kinds of other technological developments around, and they will definitely be an essential part of our future, then what about education and in particular higher education in Finland and worldwide? What kind of quality education should we have in the future? What's essential in there?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So for the education, that what do we need for a quality education in future?
Thank you. That's a very important question. In the book, I have told some views on the future of language education, so that when we have increasingly available technologies which help in crossing the language borders, the motivation for even our children to learn language may be limited, but I have suggested a scenario for language education where we use, or we of course still use our own mother tongue, and it's important to have good quality skills in it. And then I suggest two languages to be learned. It's important for our capacity and ability to understand the, in a way, relative notion or the relative character of the description of reality. And if we are bound to one language only, like sadly many Americans, so then there is this kind of false assumption that the world is like how our linguistic conceptual structure shows. And because that's not, strictly speaking, true in the sense that there are different ways to construct our reality through our conceptual and linguistic system, so then it's hugely important that every citizen of the world actually knows at least two languages, even in the future of artificial intelligence systems. It's also important because our brain is actually is healthier. It has been shown that the kind of when one becomes older, it's actually useful to know at least two languages, because one has more healthy brain, so to say. And then I suggest a third language, which would be then a kind of contribution to the cultural richness of the world, because then we can, in a way, study any language, and preferably some very small language for which the digital resources are not available for the machine learning approach, because if you don't have enough digital material for some language, so then it's actually then useful. And contributes to the, say, maybe not only this kind of cultural value, but this question is very important and regards many areas. One quick final conclusion to this is that it's good to learn to use these methods and technologies in the new ways. So that's one thing. So that the co-evolution and cultural evolution of the future is not something that replaces us humans, but we need to learn new ways to work. And in that sense, we kind of are in the edge of a new state of the world.
Thank you very much. And I think I suggest we'll give one final applause for Timo before carrying ahead.
So now it's time to move ahead on our program. We have here Pia Ek from Castren and Snellman, where she's a partner and where she heads the digital, TMT and outsourcing teams. And Pia will continue addressing the topic of artificial intelligence and algorithms, especially from the viewpoint of regulation. What are the key questions and what's the role of responsible businesses, what the companies should do in order to ensure ethical business processes? Pia is an all-round digitalist with over 15 years of experience on the field. For many years, publications such as Chamber Global and Chamber Europe, Legal 500s, and Who's Who Legal, Internet and E-commerce have ranked her as one of the top attorneys in Finland. So welcome, Pia. Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. And can you hear me? I'm not. It seems to be working. So good morning. As said, I'm Pia, and we will spend the next 20 minutes or so discussing the legal and regulatory requirements for and the framework for what could be and what is around AI at the moment. I understood I'm stepping in for Liisa Jaakonsaari, the Member of Parliament, so it's a bit of a tight spot. And in addition, last night when I was sort of preparing for this, I was looking at what was being written about AI and so forth in the newspapers, and BBC came up with this title stating that robot lawyers are here and they're winning. So maybe you should have asked the robot lawyer to talk to you instead of me. But because of that, my views might be a bit biased. Let's see how this goes. But yeah. So what we'll talk about today, and after listening to Professor Honkela stating what is AI is a bit ambitious. I'm not going to go much into detail about that, but sort of talk about what the lawyer's perspective is on how we should look at AI from a legal perspective. Then we'll talk a bit about the legal and commercial risks, including and entailing into deploying AI, and then the practical mitigating solutions, as well as also take a little glimpse into the future and what the regulation should maybe look like, or what at least the members of our European Parliament think that the regulation should look like, or whether there should be some regulation at all. AI, if we're thinking about this in such a simple way that the lawyer also understands it, could be characterized as giving computers behaviors which would be thought intelligent in human beings. And, well, having said that, as we were listening to Professor Honkela, I mean, like, there's a large spectrum of what is being perceived as AI. And we are at the beginning of a long journey where we are at very narrow AI, where there are some specific tasks that are being put forward, and that's what's going on, as opposed to, as Professor Honkela said, some general AI, which will still be quite far away. But as all the experts are saying, we do not live in a linear world anymore, but something that's exponential, going towards the sort of the general AI might not be as far away as we think. And well, as AI is being deployed all the time, and it's all around us, I think that these are questions that we should really look at. And at the moment, I mean, there's a lot of AI being deployed for specific tasks, like, well, as lawyers, well, BBC said it, the robot lawyers are coming, and looking at what we're doing in our firm, for example, we are deploying AI currently to perform due diligence, which is, the long hours going through documents, trying to find whether there's a change of control clause or something of the sort. And that's actually, it's making us more efficient and making us better. There's doctors looking at maybe certain diseases through AI and so forth. Then we might be looking at transformation of business, such as Amazon deploying AI for their supply chain, for the optimization of their supply chain. Or then we go into new business models altogether, like the driverless cars. Sorry. Well, at some point we will hit the point when machine intelligence will supersede that of human. And some notable persons have talked about the risks of the issue of uncontrolled AI. And Elon Musk, for one, he has spoken out against the artificial intelligence, declaring it the most serious threat to the survival of the human race. Pretty scary, huh? And I mean, if there's concern for humanity's future, there's a bit of pressure on us lawyers to make sure that we will still survive as human beings in this world. And when we're looking at the role of lawyers, it's basically to advise our clients and all of you on the risks that are included in whatever business you're doing or whatever AI you're deploying in your business and so forth. And as we cannot foresee the Armageddon that is coming in 20, 30 years or so, we will look at times a bit closer, and that would be sort of the present time. And what I'm showing you here is something that a good friend of mine, Rob Sumroy, and his team from Slaughter and May came up with about the risks of deploying AI in these times today. And I thought that I would like to share this with you because I think there's a lot of sense in looking at this. And since the question is how to manage the risks of deploying AI, these questions are the essential ones from a legal standpoint. So we have things that have been mentioned already, like social disruption, failure to perform, privacy issues, malicious repurposing, discrimination, and vulnerability to misuse. And as Professor Honkela also said, well, there is no error-free humans or error-free software, and any piece of software may fail. And especially when we're looking at AI, which is becoming more probabilistic, the algo may learn surprising strategies, although it's working as it was designed to work, but it may start performing really badly. Like, take an example of like a call center where you would want to see that the number of complaints decrease over time, and the machine might learn that, okay, the easiest way of decreasing the amount of complaints is to be really rude so that people stop calling. And then they would sort of, they would come to the conclusion that I'm actually doing a good job here because the amount of complaints has gone down, right? So even if there would be good design, AI may still learn in ways which leads to errors. Then the second issue is social disruption. And we've all heard the stories, well, AI will take all our jobs, and that will obviously lead to civil unrest, and we will have issues with social security, and what will we all do when we don't have any jobs anymore. But as Elena said, we are also looking at something that we would be healthier and happier, and everything's well. So there are these questions about social disruption, but they are not necessarily all evil or bad. And of course, from a legal perspective, privacy, we are looking at huge amounts of data, huge amounts of data, and the data is basically the basis for whatever discussions we have on AI or robotics or machine learning or anything, because in order for the machines to learn, they need a lot of data that they analyze. And it's important that the businesses understand and realize the legal and reputational risks in handling that data. And well, when you start collecting the data and the machine starts using the data, it might start using the data for purposes that was not necessarily intended in the first place, and this is something that has to be taken into consideration. Well, malicious repurposing. Systems designed for good may be maliciously reused. And this is not something uncommon at all. I mean, like we've seen this already in 2016 with the, what was it called? The flash crash. I don't know if you've heard about this, where suddenly the pound, the British pound, started crashing really quickly against the US dollar due to robots doing the trades. And there was a lot of discussions about this. It was algos doing trades, and suddenly they caused a huge crash of the British pound about, was it in June 2016? And then we have the vulnerability to misuse, which Professor Honkela also talked about already. A good example for this is, which you probably heard about, was when Microsoft decided to try this Twitter bot. I don't know, when I'm going this way, it sort of goes away, does it? So I will stay here. Okay. And what the Twitter bot did was they put it on Twitter, and it started conversations and started tweeting. And the people that were discussing with the bot very quickly understood that the more racist material they started feeding to the bot, the more racist the Twitter bot became. So eventually, and not such a long time at all, the bot was being really, really obnoxious, and they had to shut down the entire system because it just got really bad. And last but not least, discrimination. And this is something that we have to understand and realize, that if there's a bias in the underlying data, and it might not be a bias that we actually understand that would be a bias, but if there's a bias, of course, also the results will be biased. And the more data about individuals that are being fed into the system, okay, the more likely it is that it will also start looking at things that we haven't realized that was there, like for example in the States, where you live or where you go to school actually tells a lot about your ethnicity or any other things, or wealth or so forth, even if it's not intended that the machine would understand that from which sort of group of people you're coming, it might still draw the conclusions and understand that there is such a discriminatory factor in the data. And an interesting example of this is in the US. There's a lot of actually quite a lot of states that have started sentencing criminals on misdemeanors so that they're using AI. And in some of the states, when they have put in the data, the machine pretty quickly learned that if you're a young black man, you will be sentenced a lot harder than if you're a middle-aged white woman. And well, there we have discrimination, and if this would not be, well, if it's a government, it's really bad. If it's a private company, the goodwill tied into these questions is something that you might not want to deal with. Well, the key principles for responsible deployment then. How should we advise you guys or help the coders when they are designing the algos? And on the basis of everything is actually a risk assessment. And everything should sort of, in our world, everything goes with risk and risk assessment and realizing what the risks are and how to mitigate those and to find a comfortable level of risk that you're sort of comfortable living with. And the first category for these key principles is good governance. The second one is quality assurance, and the third one is obviously legal. The good governance is sort of trying to understand and challenge the decisions within the businesses and looking at the processes within the organizations on how to mitigate the risks and how to understand what's actually going on when deploying AI. That quality assurance is, the need for all of you who are deploying AI to understand what the algo actually does and how it performs. And then the key legal principles to implement should also be taken into consideration, and looking at the existing frameworks or to help design new frameworks, legal frameworks, is key in the legal factors. And if we're splitting this down to a bit more and splitting it down a little bit more and looking at it more closely, for good governance, the first question is whether AI is on your company's risk register at all. I mean, are there sort of sufficient safeguards if something happens, or is there somebody looking and monitoring at what's going on? And the question is whether there's real-time monitoring and alerting. I mean, like, if there is an error in the AI, you certainly want to be able to react as fastly as possible before there's a lot of damage. The third question is whether there's an auditable causal process. And that's to understand that different algos work in different ways. Some can give very clear reasons for their decisions, whereas others, it's really hard to give, out information on the predictions. Like, we don't really understand what the machine is doing and how they come to the conclusions that they do. And the more complicated the process is, the harder it can be that system has been badly designed until it actually fails. So basically, the question is about monitoring as early as possible to detect any errors that there are, and also try to see that you have somebody in your company who is sort of the internal owner, who knows what's going on and how you're auditing and what you're doing, and somebody who is empowered to react and act if it looks like something would be going wrong. As for quality assurance, that's not really a legal question, it's more of a technical question. But still, I mean, like, you have to ask the questions of whether the algo is sufficiently accurate, whether it's doing accurate predictions or whether things are going wrong. Is the data that is the basis for it, is it healthy enough to avoid biases? And is the algo well specified, objective, and robust enough so that we can avoid any misuse? And then if we're looking at the legal issues, we will go into data compliance. The discrimination risk we've already talked about. Risk allocation, meaning liabilities. Who's liable if something goes wrong? There's a lot of discussions, especially in the European Parliament at the moment, whether we should have something called an electronic person, because there's questions about whether machines that develop sort of their own sense of what's going on, whether the manufacturer can still be liable for any damage that they might cause. But having said that, sort of the conclusion is that none of this is really a one-off task. I mean, like, it's not like you can go in and say, okay, so we realize we're using AI and there's a risk to it, and we're happy that we realize this, and then everything's fine and dandy. But it's an ongoing process of basically all through the life cycle of deploying and using AI to constantly look at all these questions. Well, data compliance, as said, data is in the epicenter of all this. And I'm sure that you've all heard enough about GDPR, at least I have, to be sort of, don't mention the word anymore. It's like the word that you don't want to hear. But still, I mean, with data being in the epicenter of all, you have to ensure that if there's personal data involved, you have to have consent to use the data. So you need privacy notices and you need personal data stores, meaning that you have to make sure that there's security and there's access to the data from the data subjects if they so request. Algorithmic transparency is a good question for the data subjects to ensure that their data is being used for those purposes that they actually consented to. And all the companies should be doing privacy impact assessments when starting deploying AI. It would be nice to have, well, not nice, it's actually essential that when you start designing the systems, you go in and look whether there's the privacy by design and the ethical approach is within the technology already. And well, even the legislation requires for anonymization whenever that's possible. The challenge with all of this is that, well, most of the regulation that we have is either national or on European level or American level or Asian level, but we don't really have any global regulations that would help sort of people to implement technology on a responsible basis. And that's, I think, the big question is should we sort of get something like that going, or is it sufficient to keep this at the national level? Okay, I have a few minutes left, so let's sort of start concluding. The new technologies have always raised questions of regulation, that's for sure. But there's a distinct challenge with AI that we have not seen before, because the more complex AI does not work in a way that would be predictable to humans. And because of that, we run into trouble also in trying to decide how we should regulate or legalize AI and the use of AI. And it's not necessarily the humans who are at fault anymore if something goes wrong, but it's actually the machine. And in terms of regulation, I mean, we can look at self-regulating markets. If we would be using AI, for example, for a dating service, I mean, most probably the people, if you would get really bad results, would just stop using the service, and that's enough. And then we could be looking at sort of regulatory bodies within the industries. And then at the other line of the spectrum is something that is a total prohibition or regulation by the governments. And well, it's a good question to see. You know, I don't have the answer on where we should actually be on this scale, from going to, okay, you can do anything and the markets will take care of it, to the governments regulating and prohibiting the use of AI in certain aspects. But, well, it's not as if AI would be free from any legal and regulatory requirements today even. So I think that the businesses must have regard to the existing framework as well in deploying AI. And the more responsibly the businesses are acting, the easier it will be on the regulatory side as well, because if we can see that there's responsiveness in the way that AI is being deployed, maybe there's not so much need for regulation. And I think that concludes my time with you today. There are a few slides still in the slide set, and those are basically outlines of what the members of Parliament, well, the European Parliament's Legal Affairs Commission had to say about this when they started talking about regulation and whether there should be regulation on robots. So you might want to have a look at that later. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Pia. And now we have time for questions from the audience.
There's one.
Actually, I don't know if this is much a question as sort of a comment. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was coming to my mind as you were speaking about, you know, issues related to, I mean, not just the legal issues related to GDPR and the use of personal data, but even the results that we saw in the US when some of those personal data, when the logarithms and whatnot used things like race and whatnot to actually produce legal outcomes.
Yeah.
And particularly with the issue of discrimination, that's kind of a low-hanging fruit, but it's useful for our conversation. And I think what I think is very pressing is somehow, and this is maybe a challenge for the coders, but essentially coding into the AI systems and whatnot, something that I know this might be a very fraught word, but something akin to a morality or a hierarchy of, yeah, of course, you know, they have access, the algorithm has access to, say, race data and whatnot, but it must again, part of the coding pattern must be that it may not use that to make assessments or to make decisions. And then, of course, you know, if AI advances to the point where it starts using its own morality, I think it's extremely important that we begin sort of inputting this level into the system at an early stage before it kind of gets away from us. Because I think there was a very interesting talk by a neuroscientist, but also kind of an intellectual and a writer in the US named Sam Harris, who gives a very interesting talk about this. He doesn't view it very favorably. He sees more concern in this area, and that is that AI could essentially advance so far ahead of us that questions of morality or even valuing human life could be akin to the way we approach an anthill. Sure, nobody's really going to bother it unless we want to build a road here. And then we don't even think twice about destroying the anthill and putting the road there. And we've, you know, in that process, we may have, you know, annihilated, you know, tens or even hundreds of thousands of ants. And I guess the concern is that if AI sort of were to advance so exponentially to that level, that if we don't input morality, or at least these kinds of things, at an early level now, then the concern may be that it may get away from us at some point in the future. I was wondering if you wanted to share a few comments from a legal perspective on that.
Well, as I said, in my mind, I think it's really important that the legal as well as the business side of it discuss with the coders when they start doing these projects, because you have to sort of build in the ethics and the privacy issues and everything into the code, and make sure that the ethical side of it is already present when you start building the system, because that's when things can go really wrong, and in that sense, for the coders also to understand sort of the legal boundaries of what they can do and what they can't do, because a lot of times I know I get these calls, I got this cool idea and it's really well, and we're going to do this and this and this, and we'll profile these people and everything. Like, well, I don't want to be the business prevention department here, but still, you can't do that. But let's think of what you can do. And that's sort of the question with everything that has to do with data, is actually finding the path of what you can do, and at the same time keeping in mind the moral and the ethical side of it, because that's so important, especially when we are moving towards the But anyway, I think, well, you can hear me now again. So that this is something that's always kept in mind all through the cycle of deploying, coding and deploying and using AI. I don't know if that answered your question.
Hi, I would like to know, because there are several companies who develop the business intelligence and AI and everything, and we would like to maybe combine the data and use all data for the community. What are the means to enable that?
Depends on the data. I mean, if we're talking personal data, it depends on what the processing is based on. Is it consent, or is it based on law, or what it's based on, and what you can do with it. But if we're not talking personal data, basically what we're saying is there is no IPR and there is no ownership to data as such. So what you have to look at is sort of the contractual side of it and what's been agreed. And this is a huge, we are sort of stepping away a little bit now from the discussion, but for IoT, this is a huge discussion point currently, whether it's actually the manufacturer of the sensors who has access to the data and who sort of disregard the ownership, but who owns the data, or whether it's anybody in the chain, because there's a lot of stakeholders in the chain. So what you have to do is sort of look at what type of data you have, what type of contractual agreements or arrangements you have for how to utilize the data, and whether it's actually possible to share it or not. And then if there's this privacy sort of aspect to it, then you have to be really careful.
Comments or questions?
Yes.
Hello, and thank you for a great presentation so far. So I took special interest, you mentioned about this electronic personality and the legal aspects of that. So would that mean that these algorithms could at some point, or should they be sort of legal entities themselves that could be controlled in that way? Or is that something that is being developed or thought about?
Yes, well, unfortunately 20 minutes was too short a time to get to that, which was the next slide. But yes, so the European Parliament and their Legal Affairs Committee has actually put a suggestion forward that we should have something that's called an electronic person. So AI and robots would be regulated as electronic persons. And well, the sort of the committee paper starts with all these scary things about Star Trek, and I think Star Trek was actually mentioned and all of that, and it sort of got led to people thinking that we are actually sort of granting human rights to robots and so forth. And I don't know, you've probably seen all the articles about this. That's not really the case. What the question is sort of, since, for example, for liability, when there has to be a sort of a causal process from the actual damage to how it was caused, when there's AI that's acting sort of on its own, the question is who would be liable? And in that sense, we might need, it might be technically sensible to create an electronic person, because that would be sort of like any company that's liable for the acts of the company. We would have an electronic person being liable for the acts of the electronic person as such. And you wouldn't have to really walk all the thread all the way to the coder or the manufacturer or something like that, but there would be a liability built into this electronic person. And the second question is, of course, when your fridge starts to do grocery shopping for you, can it actually enter into contracts with your grocery shopper? And if it orders 500 liters of milk instead of 5, who's actually liable for that? So that's the second question, because now machines can't actually enter into contracts. So that's sort of the other side of the question on whether we should have an electronic person or not.
Thank you. It's all super interesting, and I'm sure that there's still a lot of questions and comments in the audience, but we have run out of time. So now we'll have a break for 15 minutes. We'll get back to the room at 11 o'clock to continue with the program, and after that we'll still have time for a little bit more discussion during the second half of the show. But thank you very much, Pia, for your presentation.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully this short break, hopefully you got some coffee and sugar to fuel you up for the next 1 hour, where we move from, let's say, more from theory towards the practice. And the first speaker of the second part of today's program is Jarkko Haapalainen, Internet of Things country lead of IBM. And he will give us some real-world examples on how digital solutions can solve sustainability challenges. Floor is yours, Jarkko.
Thank you and good morning. Shortly introducing myself, as said, on day-to-day basis, I'm working pretty much around the IoT within Finnish market between different industries, and in many cases, to large extent, also AI and blockchain, which was mentioned in the beginning of the show, are much intertwined with IoT discussions to really gain the business value. And overall, I think we are talking about the digitalization of different industries. So today's topics and today's whole program has been very much near my heart, and I think in general, all businesses in Finland as well as globally are aiming to implement different digital solutions to drive or boost the business. And obviously, this is also a great opportunity to drive better business in terms of sustainability and corporate responsibility as well. I'm not a sustainability or corporate responsibility specialist as such. What I am is really a technologist and a business developer, enthusiastic with the new kind of digital services. So happy to be here. A couple of words about IBM and also the background on why we are here today and why I'm here today. I'm visiting quite a lot in different events, different fairs, and every now and then I hear a question, are you still in the computer manufacturing business? And yes, we have been doing that. We have been in the business more than 100 years, so obviously have been transforming several times. And if we are looking at the IBM today, we are quite a different business than 10 or 20 years ago. Focusing on three aspects mainly today. First being the cognitive, so AI. We have been discussing about AI here a lot. We are aiming to run everything on cloud, so this globalization, internationalization, ways we are operating today in our business, in every business, is a global business. So everybody has to be reachable from any point of the world. Thirdly, we are more and more focusing on industries in a way that if we're thinking about different technologies, which have been also mentioned here today, it really does make a difference whether we are talking about manufacturing, whether we are talking about healthcare, and so on. So in addition to creating these common digital capabilities, we are more and more putting this to the context of different industries. And I think the good example also here in Finland is the way we are working with healthcare sector to bring up the AI-enabled solutions for healthcare problem solving. Similarly with manufacturing industry, bringing AI to the manufacturing plant floor to assist the operations there. So that is more or less the context of the digital services for IBM. And I was challenged to bring up some real-life examples as was mentioned, and I was looking at the agenda. It was pretty AI biased. The morning has been around AI. On the other hand, I saw that there are quite a lot of supply chain people here, so I decided to take a little bit of a blockchain angle. We are touching about AI and machine learning, as well as advanced analytics, IoT as well, but I think this quite a lot about blockchain. And I think it should actually not be how new technologies can help, because we have also lots of mature technology, such as advanced analytics, which has been around for years. But if I look at the adaptation rate within different industries, we have many technologies that really hasn't been used yet on the efficient manner. So I think this is more about the combination of the existing mature technologies and the new technologies, and how do we make that work together. I've also deliberately taken a global view, so let this be a trip around the world today, in a way that we are obviously smart people here in Finland. We are highly educated people in general. However, what I've learned is it's often wise to take a look at the other side of the border and see what the other guys in other places of the world are doing, what other guys in other industries are doing, and then try to mimic that, try to copy and adopt these ideas to our businesses and make the difference. Because if we are doing this also here in Finland, it's probably not leading to the best result. So that's why don't get surprised. We are taking us to the exciting places. My first example is about the blockchain, and now I have to ask, how many of you know what is blockchain about? Oh, surprisingly many. Because I've been in the industry for 25-ish years, and I think this is one of the most difficult concepts I have faced so far. To spend 1 or 2 minutes around this topic, if we're thinking about the typical business scenario in the globalized industries, we have a number of parties who are interacting between each other. We have maybe a tangible or intangible asset which these transactions are then implying to. For example, logistics or supply chain is a good example. When we are transferring goods from a place to another, we have a number of parties. There might be some mutual trust between the imminent parties, but if I'm asking you whether you trust to your whole supply chain, you probably say I don't. So there is sort of a trust issue. There is sort of an ICT systems related issue, in a way that in order to make this whole complex hassle work, you have to make multiple point-to-point integrations. So in order to get the global supply chain to work, you have to integrate all the partners. And that's where the blockchain comes in. Instead of doing this multi-hassle, we create one shared ledger where we are storing all the interactions, all the state changes of that asset. So if we are moving the box of apples from Chile to S-Market in Finland, it's going to be the status of the box of apples will be stored to the ledger in a way that nobody can alter that. So if I'm telling that it's now on the transit from Chile to Helsinki, then nobody can change the status. They can append, but no can falsify the status. So that's the basic idea. Then let's go to Africa and Australia. Early this year, one of our business partners, Everledger, brought up a solution for diamond industry. It's globally $72 billion industry per year. So rather tangible industry, not very relevant for Finland because we don't have diamond mines here, but this is applicable to all supply chain and all valuable goods, logistics. So that's why bringing this up. And the idea here is in the market, the problem is what the market is calling as blood diamonds. So some of the diamond industry is located in Central African conflict zones where diamonds are mined by unethical means, and the money from those diamonds is then leveraged to military activities. So obviously the whole industry wants to get rid of that kind of a business. As a result, United Nations declared a process or mechanism in year 2000, what's called Kimberley process. And basic principle is every diamond is certified. The authenticity and the origin of the diamond is certified within the global diamond market. However, this certification process is based on paper documents. So obviously, falsification of the paper documents, falsification of the insurance claims within this market, providing synthetic diamonds and claiming those to be authentic, and such kind of problems do exist. And that's where the Everledger comes in. They have created a digital solution where they are storing the digital fingerprint of every diamond. Well, not every yet, but they have approximately 1.2 million diamonds in the global market registered to the blockchain. There's a fingerprint, and then there is a blockchain which sort of stores all the activities in the supply chain of diamond industry. So going forward, it will be more and more difficult to falsify the origin as well as the authenticity of the diamonds. So pretty typical provenance use case, which is, I think, very interesting to the many industries, whether we are talking about high value goods or any a little bit more standard goods we are dealing with on the global market. Then we'll go to China. China is actually a huge opportunity for IBM because we're a global company and China is a huge market. I was speaking in another event where we were focusing on China air pollution problem, and we are doing quite a lot of there as well in terms of research and in terms of how do we can help Chinese industries to reduce the emissions, pollution emissions there. This specific example is a blockchain example, and again, if we're looking at the China and current CO emissions, China is, I think, approximately 1/3 of the emissions of the whole globe. And unlike in Europe, where we have a working carbon emission market, that does not exist yet in China. So they are going there. As of the current understanding, during 2018 there might be something in place. And what Energy Blockchain Labs is doing with IBM blockchain is they have created a ledger, a blockchain ledger, which is used to store the green assets and similar credits which are used in Europe. So certified emission reduction credits are being stored in the blockchain. Again, giving the possibility of the Chinese companies to bring up the green assets and Chinese authorities to start developing a carbon market mechanisms in China. Then I'll take the third blockchain, and then we'll get to some other topics. This is pretty new, so not too much concrete activities have yet taken place. Back in, I think in August, we announced a partnership with all these guys. So they are global food manufacturers, food distributors, resellers. If I recall correct, Kroger is one of the supply chain operators in the restaurant industry in US and other countries. Tyson is producing poultry and pork and beef. Well, some of the names you probably recognize as global partner operators working or visible also here in Finland. We established a collaboration effort around the blockchain in global food industry. And obviously the first use cases that are being investigated or worked now are related to food safety. And globally around 400,000 people are getting killed because of the food pollution or food contamination issues globally. So quite a lot. I did not know that. And in the current world of global food chain, I'm not sure if we have Finnish retailers here where probably the topic is on the table as well. In many cases, it takes at least weeks to backtrace the origin of the contamination when we are dealing with the global food supply chain. And thinking about the problem there, obviously there is a high risk of cross-contamination. There is a massive financial impact in pullbacks of the goods because of the fact we really cannot pinpoint where the issue is, so we have to be sure. And with the blockchain and with the traceability of the food facilitated by blockchain, the working hypothesis is we can get in the traceability, we can get to the hours or a day or two instead of weeks. So obviously a significant impact. This work is now ongoing. For example, Walmart has been doing some proof of concepting work in China with some Chinese producers. So this is not starting from the scratch. But which is important is there is a real global food industry ecosystem now getting into the picture. And I think one of the things what makes blockchain a little bit different and difficult as a digitalization concept within any industry is the fact that in order to make this work, it requires several parties. So any other digitalization effort is possible or to drive within your company. But if you want to try blockchain, it's an industry effort, it's a supply chain effort. Obviously, the next steps are pretty naturally around the ethical producing of the food and supplies. So I think the opportunities are countless here. Then we get to the artificial intelligence and machine learning kind of topics. There has been quite an issue with the drought in California areas, and obviously this is not the only place in the earth where dryness is causing, and the lack of water is causing issues in the daily living, and the lack of natural resources. One of the local companies, OmniEarth, which is what they call a environmental analytics company. So basically they are creating different solutions which are helping in environmental issues based on data, based on analytics. OmniEarth is utilizing IBM Watson, which is our AI. And specifically Watson visual recognition, and the idea here is to use the satellite images, use the aerial images, and do the analysis pixel by pixel, detecting water leakage, detecting potential overwatering situation. Now, obviously, when the water resources, natural water resources are scarce, also the watering type of activities are regulated. And the beauty of this is it's based on machine learning. So obviously we might have false positives in a way that, okay, there was a green rooftop, which is then causing the visual recognition to identify this as an overwatering situation because of the greenness. And while we are feeding back this false positive into the system, it will learn. So going forward, it probably starts to learn how to identify green rooftops and separate that from the green grass or forests and claim that as an overwatering or leakage situation. And then you are getting wondering why the hell this guy is bringing rhinos into the picture. We were looking at, in the beginning of this event, we were looking at the global sustainability themes and goals, and preservation of sort of land life was one of those. This is a good example here, but there's also a linkage to the Finnish businesses because of the fact this is a great analytics example. We are partnering with South African telecom operator MTN, and they have already had a solution what they call connected wildlife solution. And obviously, if you're thinking about Finland and the way we are tracking wolves and other large predators, it's not a new concept in a way that we are putting the sensors into the animals and then we can track them. So nothing new as such. What is different in this situation is there are approximately 1,200 rhinos killed every year by the poachers in South Africa. So in order to preserve these guys, this is quite a problem. And there, that's where the Wageningen University comes into the picture. A Netherlands university where one department is specialized on animal behavioral sciences. And in order to save the rhinos from the poaching, it's not really feasible to put the sensor to the rhinos because at some point we see that it's not moving anymore, so probably there was a poacher who killed the rhino. Instead, censoring the zebras, censoring the antelopes was interesting because of the fact these animals behave differently when they face lion or some other predator versus when they face people. So Wageningen University developed an algorithm which was able to detect that, okay, now the herd of zebras is moving that way, they are escaping that way. There is an unauthorized person in the park. And then they could alert, the system can alert the park rangers to go after the poachers. Pretty neat example, and even though we don't have rhinos and we don't have really such endangered species in Finland that we could solve with this kind of a solution, it's actually a linkage to the Finnish business and linkage to the analytics is if you are doing a big data exercise, if you want to find any phenomenon within your business by applying analytics, it's often necessary to take a look at the surroundings instead of the actual target. And this is where we typically see happening in the big data exercises. We take large amounts of data without really seeing as a humans that there might be a correlation. When we do a big data and machine learning exercise based on the advanced analytics, we actually find that these random phenomena on the other side of the building might have an impact on the specific thing. One example from US is as part of our weather company business, we did a demand analysis for one of the retailers. And obviously, also in Finland, it's a fact that if there's a sunny day, you probably sell more ice cream. But they found out that if there is a rain in the forecast, they are selling more indoor paint. So the relations, the consequences of different phenomena on different data is not necessarily too obvious. To summarize this one, specifically on the area of blockchain, I think the potential is huge in terms of sustainability-related topics, because I think many of the Finnish industries are also working with global supply chains. And already now there are different activities ongoing in the different industries which are bringing Finnish sort of competitors together to think about these events. And if we are thinking about our core industries, for example, the forestry industry, we have certifications about the timber procurement, where we have to backtrace, we have to have the mechanisms to backtrace the exact origin of the wood. We are further developing the biofuels we probably hear more about soon. And again, there is a need in the market, in the industry, to backtrace the origin of the raw materials to be able to certify that as biofuel. So the possibilities are limitless. And by combining that information, that data, with the machine learning type of things, with IoT sensor data, I think that's where the imagination is sort of a limit nowadays with today's technology. With this, I want to thank you, and let's open for the questions and discussions.
Thank you so much. Very interesting, I would say. Questions for Jarkko?
Thank you. I've been tweeting about this throughout your presentation. Whilst blockchain is very interesting, has a lot of potential, one of the issues with it is that it's a massive, it has massive energy consumption surrounding it. It's really not an energy efficient way of doing things. And I was just reading that 1 Bitcoin can consume as much energy as 1 house for a month. So this clearly is not sustainable.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the use of blockchain for sustainable, for the sustainable development goals, for example, this is something we really need to take into account. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Thank
Sure.
you.
That was actually a good question because for the sake of time, I did not really make a difference between different blockchains and Bitcoin. And as probably many of you know, the blockchain technology is originating from Bitcoin. So smart Chinese guy brought up a bunch of algorithms which were used to mine digital currency. And Bitcoin is still there to mine the currency, as well as there are some emerging digital currency mechanisms which are more to business use. Important to understand is the energy consumption and the high power required for blockchain is not because of the blockchain. It's because of the way Bitcoin was business logic-wise constructed. When we are dealing about business-to-business situations and leveraging blockchain technologies in securing the authenticity provenance of the transaction, I think then we are talking about not talking about digital currency, but more like business-to-business mechanism like Hyperledger, which we are standing for. So Hyperledger is one of the open source communities developing the business-to-business permission blockchain, where basically we decide who are partnering in the blockchain. You know, in Bitcoin, every computer in the world can basically be part of that blockchain. In the example of food industry, food safety, there were these 10 partners who are dealing with blockchain. So basically, the calculation capacity required, these transactions are just related to the number of the transactions happening, which are already happening today. So as such, the transaction capacity is not required any further. Obviously, some of the technology is needed to do the cryptographic parts, because of the fact that is the way we are protecting the authenticity of each of the transaction and unchangeability of that. But I think the energy consumption, you're absolutely right, is the problem with Bitcoin. It is not really applicable to Hyperledger or Ethereum, which is one of the commercial blockchain adopted pretty well in the finance industry and so on. So maybe that's conceptually a bit different.
Yes, we have one more question.
Thank you very much. I'm Helga Julkunen from WWF. First, to correct, we have also an endangered species in Finland, saimaannorppa, for instance. But so anyway, thank you for very, very interesting presentation. We just had the Green Office network meeting in Helsinki this week, and we had also talked about similar topics there. And based on that talk there, the question was raised: are the software companies like IBM and so on, who make these wonderful solutions for us, are they concerned about the energy consumption? And can you see, are you optimistic with the future that the solutions will be available and practices will be available? And is the wish there to make it energy efficient?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Well, I can obviously talk about IBM point of view instead of the whole industry, but thinking about the IBM, our core business in software business or in solution business is to make you, our clients, our partners better. And obviously, optimization of the energy consumptions is one of the key elements in making companies to operate more efficiently. We are not only about the software company, we are also a services company. We are running, I think, 150 data centers globally, so we are obviously ourselves quite a heavy energy consumer. The constant work has been done in that area to drive that down. So obviously that's one of our sustainability goals within IBM Corporation, to keep on developing the solutions there in terms of utilizing the green energy options, in terms of driving down the energy consumption as such. I think a good example from Finland, where we are dealing with some heavy industries, is what we are calling as cognitive advisors, where we are actually utilizing AI in the factory floor, and we can there develop the solutions. Let's say in the metal industry, which is typically energy consuming industry, where we are optimizing the whole production line based on the energy KPIs. And again, there is a sustainability aspect, but for the companies, the money talks. So if we can drive down the energy consumption, it will obviously make the profits better in the production process. And I think that's also a good example on how do we treat AI as such. We are maybe focusing more on bringing AI capabilities to assist people. And whether that's health sector, where we are using AI to consult the cancer doctor, a specialist to give the right treatment, whether that's factory paper mill operator, which we are AI assisted, giving the instructions on how he or she could optimize the production better. So that's also sort of an ethics approach in a way that we are not yet, or we are not driving even to the direction where AI would be making decisions without the interaction of a human, but more like assisting on where we are standing. And yes, one more comment. Yes, I know there are endangered species in Finland. My point was this kind of a solution does not really fit into Finland directly because of the poaching problem.
Hey. Thank you, Jarkko. Thank you for the questions. Now let's move on to our second practical case of the day.
Yes. So we've heard so many good examples on how to use digital solutions. And now for the rest of the morning, we'll be able to concentrate on one specific company example. We have Evelina Wikström here from Neste. She works there as a sustainability specialist. And Evelina is going to tell us about the case of Neste, what they've done or what they are at the moment doing with the supply chains in order to increase the transparency of the supply chain, and also to increase the amount of sustainable suppliers in the supply chain. So welcome, and you're also going to tell us a little bit about the recent hackathon that you arranged around this topic.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So welcome a lot, Evelina, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, so hi everyone, and first of all, thank you FIBS for the opportunity that you provided, and thanks for the previous presenters for the inspiring presentations. So my name is Evelina Wikström, and I'm working at Neste as a sustainability specialist. I've been working there since this April, so I think you could call me pretty much as a fresh face. And maybe referring to what Jarkko just said, so then if Jarkko is a technology expert, then I am not definitely a technology expert, but I'm more a sustainability expert. So I think we have a good combination in here. And a couple of things maybe I would like to mention before I start my official presentation. So I can see that in the presentations here, we have been narrowing down from more on the high level to the more practical level. So now we are narrowing down even more, talking about one company's specific case. Here we are talking about what Neste is currently doing in combining digitalization and sustainability. And second of all, we are still in the early phase of developing the system that I'm going to tell you about. So there are still some questions that are unanswered, but we are, of course, working on them as we go by. So, and yes, so I'm heading this project at Neste, where we are aiming to develop a digital platform for our renewable product segment, raw material suppliers. So this is the case that I'm going to talk about now. Yes, so a bit of a background to start with. So I'm not going to go deeply into facts and figures, but what I would like to highlight here is the renewables bar there and the change that has happened. And I think that my key message here is that this is how transformation looks like. So we have been able to get on a really good growth track within the renewable product segment, and we're hoping to continue the success story as we go by. And we are really aiming to get on the phase where we are controlling the global waste and residue feedstock streams in order to facilitate a truly global and scalable growth in the renewable product segment at Neste. And then telling a bit more background on how we ended up kicking off such a project where we are aiming to build this digital platform for the renewable products suppliers. So some of the questions we were thinking about internally. So first of all, if we want to grow in the renewable product segment, we will definitely need to have more raw material suppliers. We need more volumes, more suppliers. And this made us to think, how can we increase the efficiency of the onboarding of the new suppliers? So how to get new suppliers in a way that we ensure that they meet the quality requirements as well as the sustainability requirements that we have. So that was one thing that we were thinking about. Second of all, as this business area for us is still a developing one, quite a new one, we realized that many of the processes we have related to the suppliers are rather manual. So we started to think, how large of a pool of suppliers can we actually handle this manual way? And one really interesting question or statement that we were thinking about internally was that, okay, if we are now having 10 employees to handle approximately 100 suppliers, are we going to have 100 employees for 1,000 suppliers if we continue like this? So that was one thing that really kind of woke me at least up. Third of all, we can see, if we look into the future, we can see that the supply base is going to consist of even smaller suppliers and smaller volumes. So instead of huge vessels, we might have these truck deliveries, for instance, so going smaller and smaller. So that made us to think, how can we ensure that we have the visibility and control over a supply base that is more and more scattered all the time? Then lastly, also when the number of suppliers is growing, we really need to think, how can we effectively monitor these suppliers, the risk that is related to them and their performance within sustainability era. And this maybe made us to think also, what kind of opportunities could it provide to us if we started to gather data in a more centralized way? Because currently the data that we have on suppliers is scattered around different documents, different emails, under different persons, different folders. So what kind of benefits could we actually have if we had this data in one place and we could utilize it for real? So this is kind of the framework for the project. And yes, you already heard about the hackathon that we had. So when we were thinking about this challenge we are having ahead, we started to realize that maybe not all the wisdom lies internally inside of the company. So we decided to kind of open up our books and arrange a global innovation contest. So this global sustainability hackathon, in which we kind of sought help from our external stakeholders in what they think, how a sustainable supply chain at Neste could look like. So we made this after movie, and I wanted to show it to you so that you can kind of get a sneak peek into the good spirit and innovation that we had in there. So let's have a look at the video.
We would like to see a lot of different ideas and solutions.
I really don't know what to expect.
I think there are endless possibilities. I've been to several hackathons, and this is the first one where we've had other teams simultaneously around the globe working on the same problems as we are.
We have 7 teams in Helsinki and 3 brilliant teams here in Singapore, and I'm super excited about what's going to happen next after these speeches.
The next 24 hours, what we expect is achieve some sort of societal impact with our idea, or maybe witness another team's awesome idea that's going to have an actual change in the world we live in.
I guess we have to work hard how to make our idea getting better.
Every mentor is giving you different kind of information, some information that we haven't considered. So the idea has been evolving and changing dramatically.
We are very much looking forward to the night and also to the session tomorrow morning.
I expect tired hackathon participants, but I also expect innovative ideas and out-of-the-box ideas, different ideas that we have even dreamed about.
We are obviously tired after one night of work, but we managed to squeeze in a bit of sleep, and we're still quite excited about the presentation, so hopefully it turns out okay.
The jury has a very hard decision to figure out which one they actually like, because there's so many good pitches.
The interest for this event was much higher and stronger than what we anticipated.
Big thanks to everybody who participated, everybody who contributed, and all the competitors, and congratulations to winners.
Yes, so I can tell you it was a really intense 24 hours, but it was really exciting 24 hours. It was one of the most interesting projects or events I've ever been to. So hopefully you could catch some of that spirit in the video. This slide I wanted to include so that you could kind of see the overall timeline that we are having with the project and what kind of things have we been doing. So basically the Open Supply Chain Challenge was launched at Slush last year, so approximately 1 year ago. We had this hackathon in Helsinki and Singapore this May. And now we have actually contracted one of the hackathon teams to work on a demo version of the system with us. So we are currently building that. And as soon as it's ready, the expected date is end of this month, actually. So we are gonna meet up with some of internal but also external stakeholders. So for instance, our suppliers, to show the demo, to show how our plan looks like for building the system, to see what they think of it and how could this system actually provide more added value to these parties as well. So this is what we are doing. We are having the aim of having this so-called supplier sustainability portal in use by the end of next year. So this is a really rough timeline that we are having. And then what kind of a system are we actually talking about? So this is just one layout example of how it could look like. So basically, a supplier could have a profile. We could have their features such as a collection of sustainability-related information, which we are now pretty much collecting on the onboarding phase of new supplier coming in. We could see the supplier supply chain that they put into the system via map function. We could have all the delivery forms in the system, which could help us to link the operational side together with sustainability even more integrated as it is nowadays. We could manage audits in there, and most importantly, we would be able to provide guidance and support the suppliers how to submit the right information to Neste that we need in terms of ensuring quality and sustainability, and how can we guide the supplier to become even better in sustainability. So you can see those funny stars in there. So basically how to gather more stars into your profile and how to perform better. So this is really just one layout example that I wanted to show to you so that you can get a glimpse on what kind of things could be in there. And then with this one, I want to highlight that we are really thinking about a solution that could support the suppliers on a different stages in their journey with us. So we're really looking into building this kind of a pool of potential or prospect suppliers that could help us to understand the market better, but also would help us to inform these suppliers about Neste as a company and our requirements already before the relationship that we have. Half a minute, oh my goodness. I thought that was half a minute. I was like, oh my goodness. So, okay, no worries. I thought that I had totally miscalculated the time. Yeah, but anyway, so but also in the prospect phase, we would like to kind of have the opportunity to identify those suppliers that maybe do not yet meet the requirements that we have, but we could help those suppliers to meet the requirements that we have, and this way they could become our suppliers one day. And during the onboarding phase, I think one thing that I would like to highlight here is the sustainability review or due diligence that we are now currently doing for the suppliers that are onboarding with us. So with digitalized solution, we could, for instance, tailor these question sets per supplier based on, for instance, the country or feedstock specific risk that is linked to this specific supplier, and this way we could get more relevant information while we actually get less information. So that is one very interesting opportunity within this system. And I think that as an overall goal, we are looking into building a more value-adding partnership, better collaboration with the suppliers, and providing targeted support on different stages and on a more tailored way per supplier. Then in the beginning, I was already briefly mentioning the opportunities that we could have from centralized data gathering. So here are some of the things that I kind of identified that would be related to it. So first of all, I think that if we had the data if we would gather it in a more centralized way, that could provide us opportunities in for instance, comparing the suppliers to each other, telling them how they can improve their performance, but also things like seeing what kind of sustainability trends are there currently in our supplier pool, maybe on a larger view as well. We could maybe forecast what kind of issues or opportunities could arise in the future within sustainability. So these are some of the things. And one thing I also want to highlight here is the kind of opportunity for enhanced transparency. So for us, this data could be an opportunity to even better to kind of verify our sustainability also externally. So what we have been thinking about is that with this data, we could, for instance, build a public dashboard where we verify our sustainability information around the renewable products supply chain. And this way, we can really, it could really help us to build trust with the external stakeholders that we have. So these are some of the opportunities that we have so far recognized. And here I think I want to summarize in a more of a stakeholder perspective that we are really trying to, from this very early phase, we have been trying to all our important stakeholders, and we would like this to be a platform that serves a variety of stakeholders. So of course for Neste, we are, with this solution, we would like to achieve a more structured growth that would also be very sustainable. We would like to streamline our operations, monitor the risks, but also maybe identify some further opportunities. For suppliers, this could mean reduce of workload, of course, but also some functionalities that could really help to add value to these suppliers. Other external parties, this relates pretty much to the things that I mentioned on the last slide. So if we could provide these parties a more clear view on our sustainability efforts within the supply chain, then these people could also better contribute to our sustainability efforts and performance. So that is clearly one of the target groups that we are having here. And it's been a lot of talk now from my side, so I wanted to include like a key point that would help me to summarize it all. So I would say that Neste is a company where sustainability is truly a focus area in everything we do. And it really, also in this project, we can see that it clearly kind of sustainability integrates to the growth targets and the business development that we are having. So I would say that we truly believe that digitalization can help us in making our supply chain more consistent, more global, and more transparent. And then I know that these materials will be distributed to you afterwards of this presentation. So I included here some articles and then also the hackathon after movie that I showed to you. The latest article was actually launched this Monday, so it's pretty up-to-date information. So in case you're interested, please go and have a look. And lastly, thank you so much for having me here. It was a pleasure telling about this project. And if you're interested, you can also follow my Twitter, where I will be posting about the progress that we're having. on a regular basis. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelina. A very concrete example on what you are doing.
Yes.
I'm sure there must be some more questions for Evelina or comments to her presentation.
Thank you. My name is Niina Mikolaniemi. I also work for Child Rights NGO Plan here in Finland. Thanks very much for sharing so openly about the process, and that's at an early stage. It's very nice and very refreshing to sort of start following your process. I actually wanted to ask a question about transparency, which you mentioned. I'm very interested in sort of the possibility of transparent databases for responsibility and social conditions, especially in the supply chain. Did you make a conscious decision already when starting to plan this database that you will not at this stage include sort of an open or transparent feature into the database and while starting to plan it, and what kind of discussion did you have sort of related to the transparency?
It has been an aspect that we have kind of continuously kept here as we move forward, and also hackathon was one of the signs that we really wanted to keep this open. But I think that our first priority now is to build the actual system, get the suppliers on board, find the real value for them and for us. And because of course you can't make a public dashboard unless you have the data. So I think that kind of our first priority is building the system. But once we would have the actual data, then we could move forward with seeing what kind of information. Probably they would be summaries, data visualizations instead of data on a specific supplier, of course. So then we could see what kind of information could we actually publish openly. So I think that would be kind of a logical next step on that.
I have my own mic. Yeah. I was wondering, how are you going to then? Are you planning to like open the platform or also like other players? Like, how can since some of your many of your suppliers also are selling to other companies? So are you planning to use like industry-wide initiative, or could it become something?
At this point, it would be more like tailor-made to Neste. So, of course, there are already platforms on the market, for instance, for the sustainability reviews and sustainability due diligences. So there are actually a couple of solutions in the market, and some of them are these kind of solutions that would be used like across even industries. So where a supplier goes in, fills in the data, and then several buyers are using that data. But at this phase, we are talking about a really tailor-made solution for Neste. So at least at this point, we are not at least actively planning on making something that could have a wider use. But of course, why not? If we would see that the things that we build are also relevant for others, that could be one opportunity. Why not?
Is there any more questions or comments to the presentations or also to other presentations that we've heard during the morning? Well, if not, then it's time to thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we've come to the end of our the program of today. Again, a big thank you to all the speakers that gave their insights and knowledge and share it with us. And also thank you to the audience for your active participation, questions and comments. And I think at FIBS we'll continue following this theme, and most likely in the future we'll be arranging something practical around the topic of digitalization and sustainability to our members. So keep on following our communication on the future events. Thank you also to the FIBS team members. There's been a few technical challenges, but we managed to sort them out. And hope you all a very nice end of the day and end of the week, and see you in the future FIBS events.